Okay, welcome to the Jewish Teen Funders Network webinar, Training Teens to be Leaders, Advanced Leadership Opportunities in Jewish Teen Philanthropy, a webinar designed to help you as you consider multi-year programming. I'm Danielle Segal, JTFN's Program Manager, and I'm excited to introduce you to our speakers today. First, we will hear from Erica Cohen, the Director of the Center of Youth Philanthropy and Leadership at the UJ Federation of New York. A graduate from New York University and Hunter School of Social Work, Erica has been at the UJA for 5 years and is inspired by the incredible teams that she gets to work with. Erica recently completed the inaugural year of the Rusky Fellowship. We will then be hearing from Emily Kornhauser and Molly Berenbaum from the Rose Youth Foundation, who I'll introduce a little bit later. I'm sure you all join me in welcoming our speakers for today. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Erica to start us off.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm just going to set up the video. Okay, you guys can see it? Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Danielle and JTFN, for having us here. As she mentioned, I'm Erica Cohen, and I oversee our Center for Youth Philanthropy and Leadership here at UJ Federation of New York. The whole center actually has opportunities for 6th grade as teens become bar and bat mitzvah through college outreach. We have created a continuum so that when they get to high school, there's a natural next place for them. But our teen philanthropy program is sort of the flagship program of our high school division. This is just an overview of our whole center. I also want to just clarify some jargon because we all use similar words in different ways. We talk about alumni as high school graduates. So you're not officially an alumni until you graduate high school. We have opportunities for 9th through 12th grade, and it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure depending on when you join us. So when you join us in the first year, everyone 9th through 12th grade are year one together. So that'll be more clear in a little while. So I just wanted to jump right into what our years encompass. Year one is our basic foundation board experience that dives deep into the skills and texts behind the process. We spend a long time looking at consensus building, respectful arguing, the issues in the community, how to create a mission statement, a little bit more of a basic overview of the process. And that is led by our 3rd and 4th year teen facilitators. The missions are based on more basic themes, and they often tend to fund Israeli organizations because they look at missions like youth at risk with a holistic approach, and the Israeli organizations really seem to answer their missions very well. The process of their year is build a mission statement. We use that to create a request for proposal. The teens then review the proposals, narrow them down to a select group, and they hear from those agencies who present on their proposals, and then they make their allocations decisions. And all through the year, they are fundraising on their own. So UJA actually doesn't give them any money towards their allocations. They do all the fundraising and make their allocations based on what they as a board have raised. And so then in the 2nd year, we have a program called the Task Force, which is similar in structure to the 1st year, where they build a mission statement, review proposals, fundraise, and make allocations. But we hope that it is a little bit more of a higher level experience, giving the participants an opportunity to dive a little deeper into the request for proposal process, into the agency research process. They get a little bit more autonomy and authority in their decision making. They don't have team facilitators. They're a little bit more self-led. And we actually require them to focus on New York City agencies, since often in the first year they fund mostly Israeli and overseas organizations. So we can go a little bit more into that in a little while. But it is, the second year is a higher level version of the first year. And then as participants continue with us, it's a little bit more of a, like I mentioned before, choose your own adventure, opportunities for individualized experiences based on what they're interested in. So the first option would be our Senior Fellows program, who are the team facilitators for the first year. This is an opportunity for increased leadership. They take a front seat role in creating the scripts for each session. They write their own speaking parts. They have a huge impact on if we need to make changes based on the prior session. And they really are change makers for us for the program. Most of the major changes that have come in the evolution of the program have come from the feedback from these team leaders. They act as mentors, facilitators, and leaders in our program. If leadership per se, frontal leadership, is not what they're looking for, we also have two other opportunities. If they want to continue fundraising and allocation, we have a new program, the Israel Fellows, which is similar to the task force, but focused on Israeli organizations and partnered with Israeli teens who are doing the same work. So it takes it in a little bit of a different direction. And then we have a third option, which is the Executive Teen Council, which is not fundraising and allocation, not leadership in the traditional sense, but rather it's an intensive Israel seminar focused on the nuanced and complicated conversations around Israel and really preparing the next generation for conversations that they may encounter post-high school, on college campuses, and outside of their sort of protected bubble. And then for a small group of teens, they can actually apply for a spot on adult commission. This year we have 6 teens who are on adult task forces. They are full voting members here at UJA, and it's quite an experience to take what they have been learning over the last few years and apply it to, you know, the $500,000 to $2 million budgets that some of these task forces have. So that's a really neat opportunity for some of the teens as they grow through our program. The Center for Youth Philanthropy is just finished its 5th year, and it has really dramatically evolved since the first year. We began in 2011 with one board of 21 participants. This year, we just had our kickoff. We have 150 teens on 8 different boards in 10 different programs that, or 10 different groups. So those programs that I just outlined. So it really is a much more evolved program from what it once was. In its original configuration, the first year participants were the TPLC council members, and the second year participants were senior fellows who both facilitated and were decision makers in the room with the first years. What we found was that it was really complicated, not just for teens, for anyone, to both be a leader and a decision maker. So we wanted to take that complication out of it and actually give second years their own opportunity to continue fundraising and allocation on a higher level, to take what they had learned and build on the first year, and an opportunity to focus on leadership, facilitation, mentorship, and not have the decision making as part of that, just to be able to focus on guiding the process of decision making. We have tried to build a continuum so participants can grow with us on sort of the skills and experiences that they are looking for. So I'll pause here for questions.
Great, Erica. Thank you so much for showing us an outline of your program model and how advanced leadership can be incorporated. And we're going to open the floor to some questions, any questions at all about the program. Feel free to type them into the chat box, and I will relay those questions on to Erica. But while people are processing and maybe thinking about a couple of questions, I have a couple of questions for you, Erica. Now, I know you said that the second year there's kind of a similar structure to the first year. What do you see are the values in repeating that structure and maybe even repeating some of the material that was covered in the first year?
So I think for a lot of the participants, the year doesn't really, their process doesn't click until the very end of the year when they've even finished making their allocation for the first time. And it can feel sort of like this amorphous process until they see it to completion. So by adding in a second year where it's a similar process but at a higher level without some of the background text and sort of guiding them through a little bit more in depth in the process, they have an opportunity to come at the decision making from a place of sort of knowing how allocations will feel and understanding a little bit more about how to prioritize.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a question here from Celeste. She says, how do you manage if one option is more popular than the other? Do you have a minimum, maximum teams in each group?
So we try to take that as it comes, actually. We do have, so for the Israel Fellows, because we're partnering with Israeli teens, we actually did have a cap because we didn't want to have like, we had 30 kids and they had 12. So we did have a cap of 15 and it turned out to have, we had 15 kids who signed up for that. But it would have been sort of first come, first serve. And the executive team council, so I'll just go backwards actually, the second year task force, we can take as many kids from the first year as want to continue into that because we won't have more kids than the first year, so we can still split it into the same 3 or 4 boards based on their interest. And I forgot to mention actually, for the second year, we don't pre-split the teams. They actually go through a program component where they split themselves based on their own priorities. So we don't actually know yet if we're going to have 3 or 4 boards. We just know we have 35 participants in the second year. So we'll see how they break out. And then for the 3rd and 4th years, 11th and 12th graders, the executive team council, we can take all of the participants if they all want to do that. Since they aren't making a decision, we can, an allocations decision, it's more of a larger seminar style. We always have an option where everyone can sort of fall into that.
Great, thank you so much. We have a question here from Loam, wondering about numbers. How many teams complete year 1, year 2 versus year 3 and 4 going forward? Is the time commitment the same for each year? Is it increasing or decreasing? And do you find that the juniors have increased school demands and full semester seniors also have like other distractions because of college applications, and how do you manage that?
Okay, I'm just writing that down.
Yes, sorry, I can do it again. So first of all, kind of, what are the numbers? Like what are you seeing this year? What's the time commitment? And how do you balance the year out with the different grades having different school demands at different times of year?
Okay, so it's very complicated to answer your first question with how many complete the program because a first year participant can be a 9th through 12th grader. So, and then 11th and 12th graders have a few different options. So we see a very high retention rate of kids who start with us and then complete the program. We have, this year we have 150 kids. We have about 50 first years every year. So that's how they sort of grow through the program. And the number of seniors who graduate will change every year as the program grows and depending on how many enter on a certain year at a certain grade. Sorry if that's totally confusing, but it's hard to sort of answer that succinctly because we don't have a 9th grade program, a 10th grade program. It's sort of, they come in whatever year they want to. The time commitment is fairly similar across the board. All the programs meet the same Sundays throughout the year. They meet one Sunday a month between October and May. They meet all at different times. So we're here, my staff is here from 11 till 8. All of the programs meet for between an hour and a half to 2 hours, including a meal. We serve either lunch or dinner, depending on what time they're here. And the only program that actually requires more time are the senior fellows, because we meet with them on the Wednesday prior to the meeting so that they can prepare for the meeting. And as far as the time from juniors and seniors, I would say it is hard. We try to not require too much of them between sessions. And they know that if they are signing up for this, especially if they're continuing with us, this just has to be a priority, or this isn't the right program for them at that time. And because we really only ask for maybe about 3 to 4 hours per month, most of the kids who are committed to it find a way to make it happen. And we also understand if they miss one time because they're on a college visit or have an AP test or whatever it is, we understand that also life happens.
Great. Thank you. And I'm just going to call on Loam because I know that he had just a follow-up question for you. So go ahead, Loam, you're unmuted.
Hey, Erica, great to hear your voice.
Hi.
I just wanted to clarify, I wasn't curious as much about numbers in each grade, but I'm wondering how many people, we run a 2-year program, but we're really looking to expand into being a 3-year program. And we have a big drop-off between year 1 and year 2 because we do increase the time commitment between those years. Because our year 2 is much more like your year 3 where they learn leadership as well. I'm just curious, how many of your people who do the program for the first year return for the second year? Is it like 80% come back for the second year, or is it 60%? And how many who complete 2 full years come back for the third year leadership track?
So I can answer the second part of that much more easily. We had 1 kid not return from second to third year this past year. In general, if they make it to the second year, they stay with us till they graduate.
So the big drop-off is between year 1 and 2?
And then, so this past year, we actually saw the most drop-off that we've seen. What's the number? About 80% continued on with us. A 20% drop-off was pretty high. And I think that's because last year we had the most first years that we've ever had, and the boards were a little bit bigger. In the past, we generally have a much smaller drop-off between years 1 and year 2. But also, like you're saying, that it's not a huge time commitment, so it's more that kids find that this program really wasn't for them. So they don't continue, not so much based on time. And if they do continue for the second year, like I said, it's almost 100% retention.
And you said your year 1 and 2 students, it's once a month for about an hour and a half, 2 hours?
Yeah, year 1 actually is 2.5 hours, and year 2 is 2 hours.
Got it.
Great, thank you so much. Loam, did that answer your questions?
That was very helpful, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And we just have time for one more question. We have a question from Wendy. She asks, do your 3rd and 4th year groups collaborate at any point or meet up at some other point in the year?
Yes. So I'm going back to that screen that shows the 3rd and 4th years. The Israel Fellows are actually part of the Executive Teen Council, since it goes hand in hand with the work that they're doing, and it's more about an Israel education. So actually groups 2 and 3, group 2 is a part of group 3. So I have 15 Israel Fellows and 15 additional Executive Teen Council members, but the Executive Teen Council will have 30 kids in the room each week. And the Senior Fellows, some of them are also part of the Executive Teen Council because they're interested in a little bit more Israel education before they head off to college. And we actually require the kids who are on adult commissions to also be part of the executive team council so that we have a little bit more regular interaction with them, because otherwise they'd sort of be off on their own schedules. And so they also have a couple of times throughout the year where they're all together. Our kickoff program, all the kids are together. We kick off with all 150 in the room for a big program. And then they're also all together at the very end of the year for the grant distribution ceremony. And then we'll offer a couple of like hands-on volunteer projects throughout the year where kids from any of the programs can come together.
Great. Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you for these questions. Really kind of helped us understand in a bit more depth about your program. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And there are lots of different ways of kind of incorporating this further learning. We've heard from Erica, and now we're going to hear from the program at the Rose Community Foundation. Our speakers are Emily Kornhauser and Molly Berenbaum. Emily is the Initiatives Assistant for Rose Community Foundation. In this role, she supports and coordinates two initiatives, Roots and Branches Foundation and the Rose Youth Foundation. Prior to working at the foundation, Emily was the Community Engagement Coordinator at the Curie Center in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and Program Manager of the Small Business Development Center at Sierra Business Council in Truckee, California. We are also delighted to be joined by a teen who is currently participating in her second year at the Rose Youth Foundation. Molly Berenbaum is an 11th grader at Thomas Jefferson High School and serves as a co-chair for the Rose Youth Foundation. This is her second year participating, and Molly plans to major in math and physics. So let me, at this stage, hand over to Emily and Molly. So if you can share your presentation with us.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Danielle. Give me 1 second here. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Danielle. We're really excited to be here. As Danielle already mentioned, I'm Emily Kornhauser. I'm the Initiatives Assistant. I support Rose Youth Foundation, which we're about to talk about, and Roots and Branches Foundation, which is our community engagement and philanthropy program for 25 to 40-year-olds. So very similar, but different in its own way. And we're really happy to have one of our co-chairs from Rose Youth Foundation this year, Molly here. You want to say hello?
Introduce her just
yeah.
Say hello. I'm Molly. I'm a third-year senior, I guess, at Thomas Jefferson High School, and I'm one of the two co-chairs on Rose Youth Foundation.
So to give you a little background about Rose Youth Foundation, we are in our 16th year of operating. We started this program back in 2001. It's an 8-month program, and the foundation meets twice a month during that time. Each year we have 23 Jewish students that participate in the foundation. They're grades 10 through 12, and we strive to create a diversity of schools that they come from, Jewish identities, gender, age, different parts of Denver that they live in, to really reflect the community that we ultimately are supporting and giving back to. But they all come together because they have Jewish values that they want to use towards strategic philanthropy and making a difference in their community. Rose Youth Foundation members identify community issues, set funding priorities, and meet with nonprofit organizations. Ultimately, they're responsible for granting $60,000 to the community and identifying the problem and setting the priorities that they want to address. So that money, Rose Community Foundation gives to them. They don't have to do any of their own fundraising, and it allows them to really focus on the problems and issues at hand that they want to identify. each participant is able to serve for 2 years if they are still in high school. So if a participant comes in as a 12th grader, unfortunately, they're only able to be with us for 1 year. But the majority of the students do come in either in their 10th or 11th grade and have the opportunity to serve for the full 2-year term. And we don't have a formal 3rd-year program, but sometimes there are 12th graders who are still in the Denver area, still want to be involved in Rose Youth Foundation, have served their 2-year term, and so we do engage them in some of the grant making process, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in our presentation. So Rose Youth Foundation is really a teen initiative. The members and the co-chairs, who are 2nd-year participants, propel this program and all of the grant making. The only rules or guidelines that we impose on them is that they must grant within the 7-county Greater Denver metro area. They must grant to nonprofit organizations. They have to give in a primarily Jewish way. They have to work in consensus and be strategic. So you'll see the image there is like a flip chart with some brainstorm, the result of a brainstorm activity about what it means to grant in a Jewish way. So we tell them that that needs to be a priority, that they need to consider Jewish values, but then we really task them to come up with the definition for what that means to themselves and what that means to the group as a whole. We define consensus as 100% acceptance or commitments to move forward in the decision-making process, so that everyone's voices can be heard and everyone has an opportunity to participate. And we define strategic philanthropy as focused and intentional. They need to identify specific problems in the community, and their work needs to have a significant positive impact. So I'm going to hand it over to Molly to talk a little bit more about the role of the co-chairs in the program.
All right. So the co-chairs are typically elected at the end of the year. Because it's a 2-year program, they're rising 2nd years, I suppose you could say. And so the members who are eligible to vote, that's, I believe, everyone who will be a returning 2nd-year member, and for co-chairs is also the people who are leaving, and as well as the people who are about to become alumni vote. And so people run for co-chairs and get elected, presumably. There are 2 co-chairs, and yeah, so our role, at least in my view and my co-chair Julia's view, is that co-chairs are really there to facilitate, not to dictate. So we don't lead by telling people what to do or making decisions for them, but we provide members with the materials and information necessary in order to make an educated group decision. We also lead the group in discussions and, towards certain goals for each meeting, but I think we also really try to remain open to unexpected turns of conversation, ideas that get thrown in there and become a thing that we're more interested in exploring, and things that aren't quite on the agenda for the day if they are still productive and helpful. We try and educate members about concepts and issues relevant to Judaism and grant making and Jewish philanthropy. Yes, as well as the roles or responsibilities that Julia and I do. You can see in the picture, that is me on the left and Julia on the right. It was a team building activity right before Halloween, so we dressed up. But we plan meetings and activities like the one in the picture. We create agendas before each meeting, both working agendas for our purposes and member agendas for the group to see and hold on to. We help members understand the concepts used in RYF, such as consensus or Jewish philanthropy. We lead group discussions and pose exploratory questions to help the group move forward in discussion and be making progress. We manage group communications, send emails out to the group, make sure everyone knows what's going on and when and where. We organize site visits. Haven't quite gotten to that stage yet, so I personally can't give you a lot more detail on our role in that, but I'm sure Emily can. We speak with potential grantees and organizations that we're interested in funding, and most importantly, we facilitate consensus within the group because we work on 100% consensus model, as Emily said. So everyone really needs to be, if not completely and 100% in support of the idea, they have to at least be in agreement that this is the idea that we're going to use to move forward and supportive of the group's decision. So those are our responsibilities. Can I just, yeah, cool. The difference between a member and a co-chair is really not that great in terms of during meetings. It's really more what happens outside the meetings, because members have a lot of power and initiative in and of themselves. They make decisions in the group setting, they participate in activities, attend site visits. They're the ones that really draft the RFP or the request for proposals that we send out. They participate in consensus, research and present issues and potential grant priorities, which is pretty much where we're at right now in our process. We've come to 4 potential grant priorities, and we're going to narrow those down at the next meeting, which is very exciting. They network with other Jewish teens from the local area, and they learn about Jewish values and philosophy. Co-chairs have almost a sort of stepped back role in a sense. We lead the group without speaking over it. We plan activities and set goals for the group to reach, schedule site visits, send out the RFP, facilitate consensus on the board. We guide the group as the grant priorities are chosen, but the group is really the body that chooses those grant priorities. But we also get to network with other Jewish teens from a leadership perspective. We get to make new friends that we wouldn't have made otherwise, which is really nice. And we learn and teach about those Jewish values and philosophy. And so I think teaching is really what facilitates learning for us, that you have to really understand something in order to present it to others. So that's a big plus for me. Some of the skills that I've been learning as a co-chair, and that I'm sure my co-chair Julia would say that she's learning as well, kind of fall into 2 categories. You've got concrete skills like how to write an agenda for a meeting, financial literacy, especially in the nonprofit realm. Before we make any grant decisions, we look at budgets, we look at, the financial pages, I guess, from each organization that we're interested in. And so in order to do that, you have to really understand that. And in order to teach others how to do that, I think we're going to be doing a lot of that this year. And I think we also learn sort of confidence in mass communication, how to draft professional emails, what the timeline would be for scheduling emails and when you need to send those out. And so I think that's also going to be a very useful skill down the road. As well as the concrete skills, there's also abstract skills that you might be thinking of, like leadership skills, interpersonal abilities, facilitation and teaching techniques. Yeah. That's actually a picture from our opening retreat where Julia and I were presenting sort of the timeline of the process and where we're at. So we still use that particular timeline just to help members understand where they're at in the process.
So we talked a little bit about the alumni of the program, and we have a slightly different definition of alumni than Erica presented. Students who participate in their 10th and 11th grade become alumni when they are seniors in high school, because we don't have a formal third-year program. But we do invite them back to act as advisors when the members go on site visits to the organizations that they are considering funding. So they're part of the whole site visit process. They help the members prepare, coming up with questions, reviewing the request for proposal, and planning their visit. They also act as a chaperone or a staff member on the actual site visits. And then they help prepare the presentation or the report back to the rest of the members who did not go on that specific site visit. So helping them debrief and work through, kind of condense what they learned back into a presentable format, and sometimes even making a recommendation back to the group. So we see their institutional knowledge of the program, having been in it for 2 years, is really beneficial. And Molly, I'm going to hand it back to Molly now to talk a little bit about her experience as a first-year member going on a site visit, one with a third-year alumni and one without.
So I went on 2 site visits last year, and one of them happened to have, I think, 2 or 3 alumni, which was very cool, and the other, none of the alumni could attend. So it was really interesting how that changed the experience of the site visits. With the site visit to a school that we were looking at funding, we had, I think, 2 alumni joining us. And so they were really able to answer questions, not just from an experienced site visit attender perspective, but also from a potential funder perspective. And they were able to sort of give us all a view of how you can use a site visit to make funding decisions, which the first years, like I was last year, would not have known because we'd never funded before in this context. And the second years did have some idea of that, but because they'd only done what they'd done last year, they didn't have a sort of adaptive view of how that can change depending on your grant priority and how that changes depending on the type of organization that you're visiting. So it was really cool to be able to see what they were saying with the experience of having done it more than once. With the other site visit, there were not any alumni that could attend. It was a smaller site visit, and that was to a clinic that we were looking at funding as well. And we did not have any alumni, but there was another team leadership program that was actually run through the clinic. I believe it's called SHAPE, and it was essentially a peer education program where they educate the members, and then the members go out and educate their peers in high schools about, how to conduct themselves safely. And so that was really cool to see other teams as well in a similar position, even if it wasn't a Jewish group or a funding group. So we didn't get an alumni perspective on that, but we did get a sort of outside perspective from other teams in a similar position, which was really cool.
So that concludes the end of our presentation. We'd like to open it up for questions if you have any.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Molly and Emily, for your presentation. So if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box and I will relay them. And while people are thinking of maybe a couple of questions, I have a question for you two. Emily, how do you prepare the co-chairs to be co-chairs? Is there an extra training? Do you meet up with them separately? What is that process?
Yeah, so they do come prepared in one sense because they've gone through a year of the program, but we certainly do a pre-program training with them. We meet and just go over the roles and responsibilities, make sure there's a clear understanding of their expectations and responsibilities. And we also do a bit of learning to help them understand some facilitation techniques and tips, go over thoughtful communication, and just give them some tools to keep in their back pocket throughout the program. And then before each meeting, we have about an hour-long planning session to just go over the working agenda, create a member agenda, make sure we have a full understanding of the activities and conversations that we want to cover, and have a clear understanding of the goals so that each meeting we continue to move forward throughout the process.
Great.
I think the most helpful for me has been the planning meetings before each session, because you can really apply that to a specific goal and a specific meeting that you're about to have. So the general training at the beginning was definitely helpful in terms of general facilitation tips and tricks, I suppose you could call them. But I've really enjoyed the planning sessions before each meeting, because you can really go over what we're going to do and how one can effectively do that.
Great, thank you so much. I have a question here from Wendy. This is to Molly. Molly, were you interviewed to be a co-chair? I know you were voted in eventually, but did you have an interview process before the voting, or was it just whoever wanted to try could go for it?
Whoever decided to run could run. It's usually not a highly competitive process. A lot of times people decide that they definitely want to come back for a second year, but don't want the time commitment of being a co-chair, don't want the responsibility, whatever their reasons. So there are 2 open positions, and usually I think we don't get we usually don't get more than 3 or 4 people running for those 2 positions. What we don't do interviews, but we do, each of the candidates drafts a statement, and it's about 150 words, I believe, just to sort of tell the group what your philosophy is, what you're planning to do as a leader, and why you want to run.
Great. And Molly, I have a question for you as well. How did you come to Jewish Teen Philanthropy? How did it? What interested you to begin with to embark on this great journey that you've taken?
I've always been very involved in the Denver Jewish community, partly because my mom is very involved in the Denver Jewish community, and just because I really enjoyed it, and I think there are a lot of cool programs going on. RYF specifically, I applied mainly because one of my good friends' older sisters was actually was a member, and when I applied, she was the co-chair, and so she left. We didn't overlap, but she was the co-chair the year before I came, so I got to hear a really cool perspective from her of not just, hey, this is a cool organization I'm in, but hey, here's a cool organization that I lead, and here's what we really do. And so I thought that was a very interesting idea.
Great. And how, you mentioned all these great skills that you've learned from doing this kind of further leadership. How has it affected you kind of outside your Rose work? So how does that affect you kind of in school and going forward, and how have those skills helped you?
I'm not gonna lie, I think it looks really good on college applications. That's not, the reason I applied or ran, but definitely one of the bonuses. But I also think that the skills have impacted my schooling. I do a lot of concurrent enrollment classes at a local community college, and so a lot of my schoolwork is done in a group setting outside of the classroom. And so I think the email and communication skills have come in very handy when coordinating with group members. Okay, I'm going to do the post-lab questions, you do the graphs and data, and that sort of thing. I think the leadership skills have also just come in handy in general in life, in extracurriculars, group dynamic sort of things.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your program and your insights and your feelings towards everything. So thank you really for sharing back. And you can go ahead and stop sharing the screen and we'll see everyone's tiles. And at this stage, we have a couple of minutes. I would love to open it out to the floor and ask if anyone here is currently running some kind of alumni program or third, fourth year program and who would quickly like to share what the program is or something that's just going really well with that program that maybe you can share with the rest of us. Feel free to type in the chat box and we can unmute you, or feel free to unmute yourself as well. So anyone who would like to share back with maybe something that you're experimenting with even at the moment. Great. Celeste, I'm going to unmute you. Oh, I think you've unmuted yourself. So go ahead, Celeste, share back with us.
Hi, so this is Celeste Albert. I coordinate the Jewish Community Youth Foundation in Princeton, New Jersey. And we actually run a 5-year program for teens in grades 8 through 12th grade. And it's a little different than the 2 other programs that were shared. But how our program differs is that teens will accept new participants in the 8th and 9th and 10th grade year. And each year the teens are in the program, there's a different philanthropic theme they focus on. So, we sort of guide the teens on the theme each year, and we expose them to different causes in the Jewish community that they might not have thought of otherwise. So our 8th grade year, it's local Jewish social service agencies in the Princeton Mercer Bucks area. 9th grade is national social service agencies. They're organizations that are based out of New York but have a national reach. 10th grade, the teens focus on the importance of giving to Jewish arts and culture. 11th grade is outreach and advocacy, and 12th grade is giving to organizations in Israel. And our program, what was I going to say? The organizations are all Jewish organizations, however, the recipients aren't always Jewish. So it's giving through a Jewish lens that way. And I don't know what else you would want me to share.
No, that's great. Thank you so much. It's great to hear lots of different methodologies and lots of different ways of incorporating multi-year programming, and also what happens when kids graduate after that as well. So thank you for sharing back. We are just about out of time, but I wanted to say a very big thank you to our 3 speakers, to Erica, to Emily, and to Molly. Really, thank you for giving your time and sharing your wonderful programs with us. And thank you to all those who came and joined for the webinar. Really hope that it was useful and inspiring to you and maybe gave you some extra ideas as well. Look out for some more webinars which are going to be coming up this year. Details coming soon. In the meantime, please feel free to check out our website, www.jtfn.org. Our contact details are on the screen at the moment. I'm Danielle, the project manager, the program manager, and Laura Schultz, who's been helping us run our webinar today, is our communications associate. So please feel free to follow up with us if you have any other questions. But thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing everyone at our next online webinar. Thank you very much.